It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice start to your week. It's Tuesday. It does not feel like Tuesday. It feels like it is much, much later in the week than, Tuesday. But that's not a bad thing, I guess. Does that mean that the week's moving quickly? I don't know. What I do know is that football's in full swing. We got playoff football going on. We are 6 days away from the college football national championship game where Ohio State's going to take on Notre Dame. I'm in full football mode, except for the time that I took last night to watch Grizzlies and Rockets. But anyway, football, it is at the top of the mind. It's the best part of the football season, the playoffs, best teams, best players, all of that good stuff. And once again, Colts are at home, watching these things take place, enjoying what was supposed to be good football. A lot of these wild card games were absolute blowouts. People are asking if there are too many teams in the NFL playoffs. The answer to that question is yes. With that being said, it's Tuesday. I do Top 10 Tuesday every Tuesday, and, it's always pretty legendary. And today, usually I rank the 10 best teams in the NFL. It's the playoffs. We're not doing that anymore. So now there's a little bit more variety with it. And so for today's Top 10 Tuesday, I wanted to highlight the 10 things that every winning team in the NFL has and then compare that to the Indianapolis Colts. Okay? So at number 10, the first couple ones are pretty obvious. Number 10, you got to have a good head coach. Okay? I'm a big believer that good players win games, but bad coaches lose games. Okay, I don't know how often good coaching wins teams games. Sure, they need to make adjustments and do all these things, but ultimately, your players have to go out and execute whatever those adjustments are. However, bad coaching, going for it on fourth down in the wrong slot, in the wrong spot, not running the ball enough to wind down the clock late in games, things like that, though, can lose teams games. And when you look at all of the teams that made the playoffs, how many of them can you look at and be like, yeah, they don't have a good coach? I would argue none of them, even the teams that lost. Seriously, the Chargers lost to the Texans. That, Jim Harbaugh's still a good coach. Mike Tomlin of the Steelers, that's a good coach. Sean Payton's a good coach. Kevin O'Connell, who lost last night, still a really good coach. You can just kind of work your way through the list. Every team that made the playoffs has a good coach. Okay, do the Colts have that in Shane Steichen? Not sure. Unknown, I think, is the best way to describe where we're at with Shane Steichen. Number 9, a good quarterback. This is the obvious one. Okay, you're not winning playoff games. You're probably not even making the playoffs unless you have at least a decent quarterback. Who's the worst quarterback in these playoffs? Sam Darnold? Maybe. Baker Mayfield? Maybe him. Okay, probably one of those two guys. But still pretty good, solid quarterbacks. If that's your starting quarterback this year, then you're probably pretty happy about it. Okay, number 8. You got to have a general manager who can evaluate his own roster, which, according to Chris Ballard, is the hardest thing to do as a general manager, which doesn't make any sort of sense to me, because the entire job of being a general manager is having the ability to evaluate your roster. That is what every decision that you make revolves around. You hire coaches based off of the personnel that you have on your roster. You draft players based off of how you evaluate your roster. It is the most important thing. And when you look at the playoffs this year and you look at teams that weren't in it last year and are in it this year, a lot of them had to change their roster. They had to evaluate their roster, figure out the pieces that didn't fit, and remove them, and then bring in different ones that did. The Broncos drafted a new quarterback. They brought in multiple new players on defense. The Vikings signed more free agents than any other team in the NFL. Okay, the Chargers, yes, they hired a new head coach, but they also drafted another offensive tackle. They brought in a new receiver in Lad McConkey, who was really good this year. The Commanders, very similar to the Vikings, rehauled a lot of their roster, and they drafted a new quarterback. Okay, every single team that was not in the playoffs last year and made it this year all improved their rosters. That is why they made the playoffs. You have to have a general manager that can evaluate his own roster. And we have a general manager here in the great city of Indianapolis that says that that's the hardest thing to do, which doesn't make any sense. That statement alone should have gotten him fired. But hey, whatever. The next thing that I think every good football team has, really every good team, period, you have to have a tone setter. Every team has a tone setter. Okay, a leader who knows how to get guys ready, right? It looks different for every team. Like Matthew Stafford is the tone setter for the Rams. The way that he leads, he's a little quieter, than someone like Baker Mayfield, right? Who will run over a dude and step over him and get guys fired up, right? Like it's different. Okay, I don't know if you've seen the video, but there's a profanity-laced video of Terry McLaurin before the Commanders game last night, getting his dudes ready to go. Like you have to have somebody like that. For the Colts, that guy's Zaire Franklin, which is a major, major issue. He's loud rah-rah guy all week because of that podcast where it just doesn't do him or anybody really any sort of good. So you have to have a legitimate tone setter. I think next, number 6, you have to have a good offensive line. Okay, look, if we were to highlight the best teams in the NFL, the teams in the NFL that we all think have a legitimate chance to win the Super Bowl, you would put the Lions in there, put the Ravens in there, you'd put the Eagles in there, the Bills, and the Chiefs. 4 of those 5 teams, the Chiefs being the odd man out, have dominant offensive lines. Okay, the Ravens pushed the Steelers. Tough team. They pushed the Steelers around for an hour. Okay, the Lions have pushed teams around all year. The Eagles, the reason why Saquon Barkley's ran for over 2,000 yards this year is because they have arguably the best offensive line in football. Okay, the Bills push the Broncos around. That's a really good defense. They just pushed them around for an hour. Okay, and then you got the Chiefs, whose offensive line's fine at best. The reason why they have a chance to win the Super Bowl is because they have, Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL. So there's that. Number 5, you have to have an elite weapon on the outside. I think it's a requirement now. Texans, they have Nico Collins, who's had an outstanding start to his career. The Ravens have Zay Flowers. The Chiefs have Travis Kelce. They did have the Rice kid, but he got hurt really early in the year. Amari Cooper for Buffalo has had an outstanding career. Okay, like you look at the teams who lost. The Chargers didn't have an elite outside weapon. The Steelers, George Pickens is good, not great. The Broncos, Cortland Sutton's good, not great. The Rams, they have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. The Commanders have Terry McLaurin. The Eagles have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. The Packers had a bunch of really good receivers, but they all got hurt. Okay, you have to have an elite weapon on the outside. You also have to have a dominant pass rusher. That's number 4 on my list. And when you look at the best teams in the NFL, they all have this. The Chiefs have Chris Jones. The Bills have Von Miller, who looked awesome against the Broncos. The Ravens have Matabuke. The Rams have Byron Young. They had 9 sacks last night. That ties an NFL record. And you just kind of keep working through the best teams in the NFL. The Eagles have the best defensive line in the NFL. You have to have guys who can go and get the passer. The next thing that you have to have is trust. There has to be a significant amount of trust between everyone, right? Like if you want players and coaches and everyone in the organization to buy in, there has to be trust in multiple people. Players have to trust the coach. The coach has to trust the players to execute and carry out whatever the game plan is. The general manager has to trust the coach to properly use the players. The coach has to trust the general manager to get the players that he needs to do what he wants. Everyone has to trust the quarterback. And as far as the Colts go right now, I don't think anyone trusts Anthony Richardson. And I don't think anyone trusts Chris Ballard either, given the recent history and the fact that they haven't made the playoffs 4 years in a row and his last four draft classes have not gone very well. Okay, so trust, it's an incredible component of winning football teams. Number 2, you have to have resiliency. Every team that wins games has to be resilient. Okay, like you have to be able to rally when things don't go your way. And I didn't feel like the Colts were very resilient this year. Jonathan Taylor dropped that football before scoring against the Broncos, and they responded about as horrendously as they could. They got so much worse after that happened. And I think it showed a lack of resiliency. They just didn't respond to adversity very, very well this year. I think it's a large part of why they went 8-9. Okay. And then I think you also have to have a good kicker, right? You got to have a guy who can step up and doink it in off the right upright, like the Commanders did the other night, right? Because like when you're playing playoff games and you're playing against other good teams, 3 points is a lot in those type of games. So those are the 10 things that I think winning teams have in the NFL. And when I look at this list, for those who are just now tuning in, what up, the Real Jonathan Smith Show, here's the list again. Good NFL teams have a good coach, good quarterback, a general manager that can evaluate his own roster, a tone setter, a good offensive line, an elite weapon on the outside, a dominant pass rusher. There's trust within the organization. There's resiliency from the players, and they have a good kicker. Okay. And when I look at this list, and then I look at the Colts have 2 of them at most. I like Matt Gay. I think he's a good kicker. Whenever he steps up, I feel pretty confident that he's going to make it. Okay. Which to me means that he's a good kicker. I think the Colts have a good offensive line. I think that when the offensive line's healthy, it's one of the best in the NFL. The issue is offensive lines never stay healthy for a full season, and the Colts lacked depth in that spot this year, right? They had 2 guys get hurt, and then that was it. They were done. Okay. And I don't think that they had any of the other things. Okay. Like good head coach, Shane Steichen, it's unknown. Could he be into being a good coach? Sure. But it feels like he's still growing into the role. Good quarterback. I don't think I have to explain that one. A general manager that can evaluate his own roster. I mean, our guy, Chris Ballard, admitted that the hardest thing for him to do is to evaluate his own roster. Okay. I don't think that they have a tone setter, or at least a tone setter that you would want. They don't really have an elite weapon on the outside. Like Alec Pierce had a big year. He can stretch the field. That's cool. Michael Pittman Jr. really good in that intermediate area. Josh Downs good on the short, quick routes. But they don't have a Justin Jefferson or, a Romeo Dobbs or a Amari Cooper or anybody like that. They don't have a dominant pass rusher despite using a lot of draft capital on that position. I don't think that there's trust within the organization. I don't think players trust Ballard, and I don't think Steichen trusts Ballard, and I don't think anyone trusts Jim Irsay after his decision to keep Chris Ballard around another year. And, I hit on the resiliency thing not that long ago. I don't think that the Colts were very resilient this year. Okay. And after looking at this and realizing that this Colts roster needs to be completely revamped, and the front office probably does as well, but that's not going to happen. So let's look at the things that might actually change. And that would be the roster. What free agents should the Indianapolis Colts go get? Who should they go and get to make their team better? Right? And the answer is there's like a lot of guys available that I would love for the Colts to go get. Will it happen? I don't know. We'll see. Probably not. I think that we're going to see Chris Ballard opt to sign older veterans that are probably just going to be backups. So I doubt that he'll go get any of these top end guys, but I really hope that he does, because this team lacks talent. That's one of the things that I thought was obvious all year. Like when they played the Vikings and the Lions and the better teams in the NFL, it was absolutely apparent that the Colts lacked talent. Okay, so go get top end talent in free agency this year. There's 2 wide receivers that could potentially hit free agency if their teams don't franchise tag them. T. Higgins from Cincinnati would be an awesome pick. He'd be an awesome free agency signing. Like that's a guy who would step in. He's the number 1 receiver from day one. And Chris Godwin is also set to potentially hit free agency if he doesn't get tagged. And, same thing. He would be a legitimate wide receiver 1 for the Indianapolis Colts. And they need that. Like look, the receiver room for the Colts is solid, but that's really it. Okay. Michael Pittman Jr. is good. Josh Downs is good. Alec Pierce is good. That's really it. It's a lot of good. They need a little bit of great on this roster. There's no great anywhere on this Colts team. And a guy like T. Higgins or Chris Godwin could be that for them. They also need a pass rusher. Despite, Chris Ballard sinking just tons and tons of, draft capital into these guys. like you got to go get an edge rusher. Khalil Mack, a little bit older, supposed to hit the market this year. Josh Sweat, 27, playing for the Eagles. He'll probably get tagged or extended, but if he gets out there, go grab him. DeMarcus Lawrence, also a pretty solid option. He's 32, right? He may hit the open market, played for the Cowboys this last year. The Colts need someone who can actually go get the passer, okay? Like all three of these guys have proven over the course of their careers that they can do that, right? I think one of the biggest issues, I know that one of the biggest issues with the Indianapolis Colts this year was their third down defense. Okay, they were second to last in the NFL at getting off the field on third down. You're not going to win games when you do that. And part of that was because they couldn't get after the passer, right? The idea coming into the season was that this Colts off the defensive line that was deep and had DeForest Buckner and Kwity Paye and, first round pick Leatu Latu and all these guys. The thought process was that those guys would, shorten the time to throw, which means that this Colts secondary that lacked experience and talent wouldn't have to cover for as long. And that did not happen. Did not happen. The Colts were, I believe, 25th in the NFL in sacks this year. It's not good enough. Okay, they need to add a little bit of talent to that room, and a guy like Khalil Mack or Josh Sweat or DeMarcus Lawrence could totally do that. Okay, they also need help at linebacker, right? Someone who can blitz, because no more Gus Bradley hopefully means that we blitz a little bit more, right? They need guys who can blitz and cover, right? They need more speed at linebackers. Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed do not possess that. They're good downhill, fill the run gap, miss a tackle, and let Nick Cross come up and make the tackle. EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin, they're really good at that. But they need someone who can actually cover, guys that can run. I'm thinking Zach Bond from the Eagles. They'll probably extend him or at a minimum franchise tag him. He's an absolute beast, has been all year. Dre Greenlaw from the 49ers. 49ers are in an interesting spot. They could be in tear it down and rebuild it mode. If that's the case, then maybe they don't re-sign Dre Greenlaw, who tore his Achilles last year in the Super Bowl. Awesome linebacker, awesome dude apparently as well. And then there's Nick Bolton for the Kansas City Chiefs, their best linebacker. We'll see what the Chiefs decide to do with him in the offseason. But all three of these guys would be immediate upgrades at linebacker for the Colts. They would get a little bit of great on this Colts roster. Like Zach Bond's awesome. He is incredible. If you've watched the Eagles play, then you know exactly who that guy is, right? And the Colts don't have that. If a casual NFL football watcher watch the Colts, they know who Anthony Richardson is because he's been in the media a lot. But I don't think that they'd turn on the TV, in 5 minutes and be like, oh, that guy's awesome. I don't think that casual NFL people do that with the Colts. Whereas with teams like the Eagles and the Lions, you watch for 5 minutes and you're like, holy crap, they got dudes jumping off the screen all over the place. And you remember their names. The Colts don't have that. And a guy like Zach Bond or Dre Greenlaw or Nick Bolton, I think would give that to the Colts. The Colts also need help at corner. This is actually a pretty solid free agency class at corner. DJ Reed, starting corner in New York. Dude can really play. Charvarius Ward, he's potentially going to leave San Francisco for personal reasons. His daughter died earlier this year, and he played anyway. And, I feel really, really bad for the guy, but he could potentially leave San Francisco. The Colts need good corners like Jalen Jones, Samuel Womack. Great stories. Jalen Jones, 7th round pick. Samuel Womack was taken off the waiver wire. Okay. With that being said, the Colts need to be better on the outside. That has to happen this offseason, whether that's through the draft or through, free agency. It's probably going to happen through free agency since I don't think this is a great cornerback class. So DJ Reed or Charvarius Ward, either one would be awesome. And then finally, the Colts need help at safety because Julian Blackmon, hopefully, is not coming back. Oh, but Jonathan, he played through a torn labrum. The torn labrum thing is the most overrated thing ever. It is, okay? My right labrum's torn. My left labrum is partially torn. I go through life just fine, okay? The only thing I can't do is throw. That's not true. I can kind of throw, right? But it hurts. So the whole torn labrum thing, if you're keeping your arms, not over your head, then you're fine. Okay. This is so freaking overblown. Anyway, Julian Blackmon, he's hopefully gone for good. They're gonna need a new safety. Budda Baker's one of the best in the NFL. Javon Holland's one of the best in the NFL. there are going to be good safeties available, so these guys don't necessarily have to be locks, but we'll see. When we come back here in about 2 or 3 minutes or so, Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, he's going to join the show, and we're going to talk NFL playoffs. I'll be right back with Zach Pereles.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Big show today, in part because Zach Pereles of CBS Sports is joining the show to talk a little NFL playoffs. Zach, what's going on, man?
How's it going? What a weekend of football and, honestly, sports all around.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. I mean, it's the NFL playoffs. It's an outstanding time. We got, the college football playoff is about to end. That has been a lot of fun to watch as well. But I mainly want to talk to you about the NFL. Which team impressed you the most after the first round?
Oh, man, I think for me, most impressive team, I really loved what the Rams did last night. But for me, the most impressive team was the Ravens. Just because we all know about Lamar Jackson has had some struggles in the playoffs, and he's had some struggles against the Steelers. And the Steelers, say what you will about them, and I've said a lot about how I don't think their ceiling is very high. They know how to win games. They muddy it up. They get these crazy turnovers and this, that, and the other thing, and they have had the Ravens number for a while. But to see the Ravens just kind of that first half, I think they outgained them 300 to 60. That was exactly what the Ravens needed. They arrived, they did not mess around. Derrick Henry, these are the games that you get him for. When you need no nonsense, we're going to, put our foot down. We are going to show you just how good we are. They got him. They obviously had Lamar Jackson. You saw him, keeping the ball a ton. He wants the ball in his hands. It's the playoffs. He knows how important this time is. So I was never super high on the Steelers, which, I guess turned out to be the right kind of idea. But just to see the Ravens, this is a team that, has had its struggle with the Steelers. Just to see them execute at the highest level, put that game away early, I was really impressed. That's what they had to do, and they did it exactly perfectly.
Yeah, they were really impressive. I would give the nod to the Rams just because I think beating the Vikings is more impressive than the Steelers. The interesting thing about the Ravens is I just I don't trust the pass defense. Is that a fair critique to have of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gotten a lot better. That's the one thing that I'm encouraged by, and obviously you saw a couple of big breakdowns that was surprising against the Steelers. I'm going to be really interested to see, what I think that the Ravens and the Bills is like one of the most, like maybe the most excited I've been for a game this year. But those Bills wide receivers, they all fill a really good role, but none of them's like take over the game, sort of guy. So I'm going to be really interested to see how they hold up against a really well constructed passing offense, really well constructed offense as a whole, but not a team that has like a guy. Like they don't have a guy as talented. I know George Pickens is up and down and can be really frustrating, but he is really talented, and you saw it at times in that game. So I'm going to be really interested to see what Baltimore can do there. They really remade that entire defense when they moved Kyle Hamilton back to just kind of more of a traditional safety role about halfway through the year, and they've been much better since. But yeah, it's going to be a big test for, a rookie like Nate Wiggins. We know how good Marlon Humphrey is. It's going to be a lot of fun. The Ravens are going to have to tackle like Khalil Shakir. I think Jamar Chase only had more yards after the catch this year than Khalil Shakir, which is a wild stat for a guy who was probably off the radar coming into the season. They're going to have to tackle. Obviously, Josh Allen does a great job getting the ball to his running backs as well. Ty Johnson had an amazing catch for a touchdown over the weekend. So, yeah, it's going to be a big test for the Ravens. They have been better lately, but do I trust them? Like you said, I'm about to find out.
Fair enough. Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports. You can read all of his stuff over at cbssports.com. He just had an article come out on Rams Vikings last night and the Cowboys potentially hiring Deion Sanders. Are you selling your stock on Justin Herbert like everyone else is? I'm not. I just think that, their best receiver is Ladd McConkey, who's good, but if he's your best receiver, then you're kind of in trouble. Are you concerned about Justin Herbert?
I'm not concerned. I certainly wouldn't sell my stock. Like the playoffs and these one-off games are the perfect time for overreactions. I think if you were to sell Justin Herbert's stock right now, you'd be, forgetting about a really, really good stretch that he played this season. Like you said, this is a perfect example of a team that arrived early because the coaching staff did such a good job. The Chargers were a team that didn't commit penalties. They ran the ball okay. They didn't give up, too many big plays on defense. They basically didn't beat themselves, and that'll give you a decently high floor, and they won enough games to make the playoffs. But this was always a team that, they were rebuilding. This was a rebuild on the fly, and they arrived early. I'm really excited to see what they do, especially if they get some money freed up this offseason. I'm excited to see what they can do on offense. They obviously got a hit with Ladd McConkey. I'd love to see another really good wide receiver there. They could really use a boost in the tight end room, interior offensive line. So there's a lot of work to be done. But for what Justin Herbert did this season in these circumstances, there's an argument to be made that this team should have won 6 or 7 games. And, that was kind of the skill level that they were working with on offense, probably a 6 or 7 win team. And Justin Herbert and, Jim Harbaugh lifted them to a much better record than that. So I'm not selling my stock. In fact, I will buy it if there's been a dip.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. This team wasn't supposed to win 11 games. You could argue that they weren't supposed to make the playoffs, and they did it anyway. So I'm with you. If it's taking a dip, I'm buying all of it. Is there a team after watching this wild card round that you went into it thinking yeah, this team's good, they might win a playoff game? I guess, is there a team that your expectation for them or I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I'm doing a really bad job of it. Okay, here, let me say it like this. Is there a team that you didn't think could win the Super Bowl, but after watching them play in the wild card round, you changed your mind on that?
I think honestly, let's go back to the Rams there. I thought that, I thought that they would lose this weekend. Like, I thought Sam Darnold had, is a guy who has not played in a lot of big games late in the season in his career. I thought that maybe he got those nerves out in that really, really bad game against the Lions last week. And the Rams this was like a complete domination. The Rams defense almost outscored the Vikings entire team in this game with that Jared versus Scoop and score. Like, I went into this game, I picked the Vikings. So obviously I didn't even think the Rams would win this one. But here's the thing. The Rams, if you give the Rams any given week, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, like, those guys can just draw up a game plan and just be absolutely on fire and beat anyone. That's what I always thought. I had a little bit, my biggest issue this weekend was, can that secondary hold up against Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, whatever? And they did. And they not only held up, but they dominated. So it's one of these things where, like, you add a hot offense with, like, a defense that has been able to get pressure. They've done such a good job, with their picks, building the defensive line. They've added some guys through, not even big free agency deals, but important free agency deals. You look at a guy like Akella Witherspoon, who did a really good job on Justin Jefferson. I think that they're a team that, if everything goes right, and I'm not saying that it will, the Eagles are tremendous, but they're a team that, like, hot offense with a quarterback who's done it before and can just get on absolute fire, and a defense that can make some plays. That's a team that I think took a step up from maybe wins a game to maybe wins a game and a game and a game and a game and wins a Super Bowl.
Yeah, they're really good. Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, talking NFL playoffs before the year started. The reasons that you just said of, like, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay and Kyron Williams, you knew that they'd be able to score the ball. The question was on defense, right? Because they've got a lot of younger guys on that side of the ball, and they've just gotten better every single week, which is, the sign of really good coaching. When they took week 18 off, I think people were kind of concerned. But I was like, I don't know. When they're healthy, I feel like they can beat anybody. And obviously, they beat a really good Vikings team last night, blew them out, which was kind of the theme of the wild card weekend. Are you surprised by all the wild card blowouts?
Yeah, I am. I came into this weekend, I thought that there were going to be a lot of good games, and Vegas kind of reflected that. I think that 4 of the 6 games were within 5 points in terms of their spread entering the weekend, and then the other 2 were still within single digits. And like I mentioned earlier, one of those was Steelers-Ravens. Like, there was plenty of evidence to suggest that would be a close one. Yeah, I was a little surprised. You always expect 1 or 2 blowouts when half of the league makes the playoffs almost. But yeah, I was surprised. And yeah, I think the blowouts end here. I think it's kind of similar to the college football playoff, where we saw a lot of, blowouts early. And that's because there's a difference between being a top, 3 team and being a top 12 or 14 team in case of the NFL. And now the difference between a top 2 team and a top 4, 5, 6, 8 team is a lot smaller. So it's going to be a really good weekend ahead.
It is. People are asking, are there too many teams in the NFL playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, or did some of them deserve to make it if we carry it over from college football? I like the number because, yeah, like, some teams deserve to have a chance and then they lose, and that's the point of the playoffs. Like, what would you rather just have 4 teams make it and see how it goes? Like, no, I think it's teams deserve to have a chance to make the playoffs, and they deserve to have a chance to win. And that also means they deserve to have a chance to lose. And that's how it goes.
Yeah. I kind of preferred 6, which I know I'm wrong because everyone watches the games, and for all the reasons that you just said. Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, talking NFL playoffs. Do you think that if the Broncos had scored 2 touchdowns in the last 90 seconds, that Broncos fans would be proud to have only lost by 10?
That's a great question. They'd frame the final score, but not the scoring summary, is what you're saying. Yeah, no, I think it was a really good. Again, I think that's maybe a common theme that you can see here from some of these teams. Like, it was a really good year that ended with kind of a thud. Way better than expected. The Chargers, I think you file under that. The Broncos, you certainly file under that. And I was actually thinking about this last night because as frustrating as how the Vikings lost and how their season ended, this was not supposed to be like, this was kind of supposed to be that bridge year between Kirk Cousins and J.J. McCarthy. Like, Sam Darnold was in a 1-year deal. He wasn't even the starter until, I guess he was the starter, quote unquote, until JJ got hurt and there was no competition for the starter. So when you're a Vikings fan, you could say, hey, this is a bridge year and we won 14 games. I know it didn't end like we wanted it to. But on the other hand, it's like when you sometimes you find diamonds in the rough. Sometimes you have good teams when you don't expect them to. So losing in this manner is just so frustrating, especially when you have all the talent that they do. But yeah, I'd say like Broncos, Chargers, and there's an argument for the Vikings, although obviously it's not as strong of one, that this was actually still a really good year that just ended with a dud.
Yeah, that's just the way that it goes sometimes. Like you were saying. 2 more questions for you, and I'll let you go. Aside from Bills Ravens, because that's clearly the headliner of this next round, which game are you looking forward to the most?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Bills Ravens, I think it's not even close. Like, if I see anybody rank the divisional round games and they have anybody other than Bills Ravens at 1, I'm just gonna have to ignore it. I think Rams Eagles, let's revisit that. Like, this Eagles passing attack, it's really simple. I don't know if that was Jalen Hurts, first game back, but if the Rams can stop the run, and that is obviously a gigantic if, like, there's a world where Saquon Barkley runs for 200 yards and this game is 35-10 because the Eagles defense swallows the Rams whole. But there's also another world where maybe Saquon, there's a couple holes and he gets tripped up before he can go for an 80-yarder. And maybe there's a couple of those Matt Stafford throws where he just takes the wrist and it's right on target, and Puka Nacua is better than anybody who's lined up against him. And all of a sudden this game is, maybe 21-21 halfway through the fourth quarter or something like that. That's the thing with the Rams. Like, they do not have the talent top to bottom that the Eagles do, but they do have the guys in the right positions, quarterback, wide receiver. They've got guys who can rush the passer, who can make those 2 or 3 splash plays to even out that discrepancy in overall team talent. So I think that's the number 2 for me. Commanders Lions is obviously going to be a ton of fun. But yeah, I think Rams Eagles, like that Sunday, like starting at 3 Eastern, like I'm going to sit on my couch and just probably smile at the TV until midnight.
That sounds like my plans as well. Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking NFL playoffs. I think for me, I think obviously Bills Ravens, that is clearly the headliner. I think interest level tells you that. The line tells you that. Baltimore opening up as a 1-point favorite. I think I'm probably second most intrigued by Lions Commanders just because Jaden Daniels is amazing and he's playing just really good football right now. I'm also very intrigued at what Chiefs Texans is going to hold. Obviously the Texans struggles on the offensive line are very well documented all year. Their second and third best receivers are out, but their defense just seems to give every quarterback fits. They gave Justin Herbert fits. They gave Josh Allen fits earlier in the season. And I'm just very interested to see how Andy Reid and the Chiefs deal with this Texans defense that's got a great pass rush, good linebackers, and really good players on the back end as well. Is there I guess how likely do you think it is for the Texans to pull off an upset in that game?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Like the roster construction is there. Like we talk about really big impact players, really big impact positions. It's quarterback, it's wide receiver, and it's a guy who can rush the passer in the playoffs. And the Texans have all three. Like CJ Stroud hits a bomb or two to Nico Collins, and they get a Will Anderson strip sack, a Daniil Hunter strip sack. Yeah, like I wouldn't say that the probability of an upset is big, but I would say there's a reasonable chance that this is another close game, and the Chiefs, who play a ton of close games, find a way to win. I'm just a little too worried about Houston's offense and Patrick Mahomes. Like the stats, the frontline stats aren't amazing. He turned the ball over a decent amount. He didn't throw a ton of touchdowns. It was a little bit frustrating all throughout the year, but he does such a good job of just keeping them on schedule. Doesn't take a ton of sacks, gets the ball out. Just it's really hard. The Chiefs, the reason that they win all these close games is because they don't ever beat themselves. It's like you're just waiting on them to make a mistake, and then Patrick Mahomes runs out the last 6 minutes of the clock on you. So I could see this being a one-score game. The spread, I think, is Vegas always knows Kansas City -7.5. I think that could be where we end up, and it'll be one of these things where the Texans hang around. But is it really hanging around when you're going against a guy who never lets you win these games in Patrick Mahomes? So I'd say low probability for a Texans win, but reasonable probability that it's a one-score game in the fourth quarter.
If Deion Sanders leaves Colorado to go to the Cowboys, how surprised would you be, and how intrigued would you be by what's going on in Dallas?
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Well, I feel like you always have to be intrigued with what's going on in Dallas.
Fair
First
enough.
things first, what were they doing this entire week if they weren't negotiating with Mike McCarthy and they also weren't having a head coaching search? If Deion leaves, I would be really surprised. Like, I think I understand, like, Deion Sanders has really built something special in Colorado, and I understand that maybe it'll be a little bit different with his sons leaving, but I really struggle to see, like, what is the upside of him going to the Cowboys if he's not going to coach his son. Obviously there's a lot of money that can be involved in coaching for a team that you played for, whatever, this, that, the other thing. Like, I think that if I took an interview with the Cowboys, I would ask Jerry Jones, will you actually spend money on this roster? Because their money spending habits haven't been that great, and they have a lot of holes to fill. I think that Deion has something sustainable at Colorado. Obviously, he's going to have to find a quarterback and all these different things, but it's a whole lot easier to get really good in college with the NIL and all these other things. Like, you can recruit your own players and get really good players year after year after year. It's a lot harder to do that in the NFL. So Deion Sanders, like, I as soon as the Cowboys said Mike McCarthy wasn't coming back, you had to think the Cowboys would pursue the biggest names because they have to be in the news all the time. And what do you know? Two of the first names that are mentioned, Bill Belichick and Deion Sanders. So that was not surprising at all. But I would be really surprised if he left. There's just so much going on in Dallas. It seems like too much of a combustible situation of, Jerry gets upset and they're not winning. And that's not the case at Colorado, where Deion is beloved and he is getting guys. And even if his kids aren't there, he can build something sustainable. So I don't envision him in Dallas, but you had to know that he would be one of the guys Jerry Jones would talk to.
Would you be more surprised if Deion Sanders left Colorado for the job, or if Bill Belichick left North Carolina?
Ooh, I think they're both huge long shots. I'd be more surprised. This might sound surprising, actually, but I think I'd be more surprised if Bill Belichick left. If Bill Belichick left North Carolina, like, he just got there. He has already said no to Tom Brady, who's now with the Raiders. Like, and I just can't imagine him putting up with all of the stuff that goes on in Dallas. The big thing with Bill Belichick and kind of why his Patriots fell apart is that he wants a ton of control. He wants to be the GM. He wants to run the personnel. Jerry Jones is not a guy who's going to cede control. He wants to run football, and he wants to do this, that, and the other thing. So I think, if Dion and Jerry Jones are these two guys who absolutely, embrace having huge roles in things, and they're very out there and very charismatic and always willing to talk. Bill Belichick, you've seen his press conferences. He'll say, on to Cincinnati for 20 straight minutes if he has to. So I'd be surprised. I think that there's too many mismatches between Bill Belichick and Jerry Jones. And I just can't see it. I can't really see either of them. But if there's a 1% chance that Deion Sanders leaves Colorado, I think there's a 0.1% chance that Bill Belichick leaves North Carolina.
Okay, fair enough. Zach, thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a blast.
All right, man. I will talk to you later. That is Zach Pereles of CBS Sports. He's a writer over there. You can read all of his stuff over at cbssports.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Zach_Pereles. He does a really good job. Very, very knowledgeable as well. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Indiana. Indiana fans are not happy right now because Indiana lost a road game in the Big Ten to an Iowa team that can really score it. They play Illinois tonight at home. My thoughts on that game when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week so far. Oh, man, Indiana playing basketball tonight. I can't wait. I can't wait to watch the Hoosiers play. I can't wait to watch the Hoosiers win and then get on Twitter and see absolutely nothing about how bad this team is. Indiana fans are upset, and rightfully so, okay, because they got blown out on the road by Iowa. If it makes you feel any better, Purdue lost by double digits on the road to Penn State, who's not as good as Iowa. Sometimes you lose conference games on the road. It happens to everybody. They beat Illinois tonight, though, at home, the 19th ranked team in the country. The opinions on Indiana will swing once again. Indiana is still very talented. They are still very capable of winning against anybody that they play against. Okay? Dan and Kent yesterday during the power hour, Dan and Kent were talking about what kind of team Indiana is yesterday. And they didn't have an answer, right? They're like, is this a shooting team? Are they like an interior team? Are they just like a really strong defensive team? What are they? And so I took that question home because I didn't have an answer yesterday either. And I began to ponder on it. The Indiana basketball team is like public school cafeteria food. One day it's great. Some days it's average. Other days it makes you want to throw up, or the food makes you crap your pants in front of everybody, and it's really embarrassing. Okay, that is who the Indiana Hoosiers have been this year. They have been incredibly inconsistent against teams like Louisville, Nebraska, Iowa. They looked like the worst team in the Big Ten, that's probably a bit dramatic, but you see my point. Against teams like South Carolina, Providence, USC, the second half of that Penn State game, they looked like a team that deserved to be ranked. They shot the ball well. They defended at a high level. Omar Ballo looked good on both ends of the floor. Then against, Gonzaga, who's really good, and Rutgers, they look like a middling Big Ten team that might sneak into the NCAA tournament. Okay, they have been incredibly inconsistent. That is who the Indiana Hoosiers are right now. Okay, and tonight they have got to start being consistent. When Indiana is at their best, they are an inside scoring team with streaky shooting. That's what they are right now, while playing average defense due to their lack of great athletes on the ball. Okay, the good news for Indiana is that Illinois' best player may not play tonight, which is a big deal because starting tonight over Indiana's next 8 games, they're going to play 5 ranked teams. Okay, this is a very important stretch of their schedule. If they can go 5-3 through the stretch, they're going to be in great shape for the NCAA tournament and getting a decently high seed. Okay, that stretch starts tonight. They need to win tonight because there's a decent chance that Illinois' best player does not play. As of yesterday, I haven't checked this yet again today, Coach Underwood, head coach at Illinois, said that he didn't know, I'm going to butcher this name, so my apologies. Coach Underwood said he didn't know if Kasparis, Jakusinis, let's go with that, from the big tall white dude from Europe. That guy, they don't know if he's going to play. He's a big freshman guard from Lithuania who is Illinois' best player. Okay, he's their leading scorer, leads them in assists, leads them in steals. He's their best three-point shooter at 41%. As of right now, unsure of whether or not he's going to play tonight. I hope he doesn't play because that game gets a lot harder for Indiana if he does. And we come back coming up here at 11 o'clock. The NFL wildcard round has concluded. And, I like to give out awards and trophies and those different types of things. It is it's the participation trophy era of the United States of America. So we're giving out awards, or I'm giving out awards to every single team in the NFL after the wild card round. Those awards will be passed out when we come back here in about 4.5 minutes.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T.
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The key ingredient is something called testosterone.
It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Welcome to the real Jonathan Smith Show, hour number 2. Zach Pereles came on earlier. He was great. And I'm really excited for this next segment. I'm giving out awards to every single team that played in the NFL wild card round. Teams that won get awards, teams that lost get awards because, participation trophies. We love them here in the great United States of America. And, I almost won, or I did win an award last night. Well, no, that's not true. I almost won Gets to Sleep on the Couch award, my wife and I. So my wife really enjoys playing games, like board games, video games, all that kind of stuff. So we bought Mario Party because, my wife likes to play that game. And I'm like, all right, I had never played. Okay. So we play. We played, the last 2 nights. I won each game because I'm just that guy, apparently. And then played last night, and it was not good for your boy. And I was getting really frustrated and annoyed. My wife wins going away, and I'm upset, and I'm like blaming the game because I'm really just a child when it comes to this kind of stuff. And and game ends, and I'm pretty quick at like calming down, like once something's over. Everyone who listens to the show, like I'm a huge Arkansas fan. Like I'll watch Arkansas play a sporting event, be frustrated, but as soon as the game's over, I'm chill, good, whatever. And that's what happened last night. And I looked at my wife and I was like, congrats. Like, she finally won a game. So I was like, congrats. And she was like, you don't really mean that. I was like, what's that supposed to mean? She goes, it means I'm not allowed to win anything. And I was like, oh, okay. This is not good. Anyway, NFL playoffs, wild card awards. Let's get into it. So the best performance award has to go to the Los Angeles Rams. It has to. Okay. Taking week 18 off doesn't seem so bad now, does it? Right. They just crushed the Vikings, right? 27-9. And the Vikings were a really good team. Like they finished the season at 14-4. They lost to the Lions twice and the Rams twice. Like that's kind of a tough pill to swallow. Okay. And, even though I'm sure that there's some people now who are going to be like, the Vikings weren't even that good, even though they just won 14 games. But the Rams were just awesome. Pass rush was dominant, 9 sacks, ties an NFL record. They kept Justin Jefferson in check. Matthew Stafford came out dealing. Puka Nacua just always finds a way to get open. Kyron Williams ran the ball well. And they just dominated what was a really good Vikings team. Just a really, really good Vikings team. And, did Sam Darnold lose himself a little bit of money last night? He definitely did. What should the Vikings do with Sam Darnold? I don't know. I'll get to that here in a minute. Next award I'm giving out is the LiAngelo Ball Up-and-Comer Award. For those who don't get that reference, LiAngelo Ball, brother of Lonzo and LaMelo Ball, released a rap song that has gone uber viral. I have not listened to it, but if you see people saying something like, I might swerve, been that corner, whoa, yeah, that's what that's from. So big new song. He just signed like a new record deal. Like it's kind of crazy how quickly he's blown up. So it's the LiAngelo Ball Up-and-Comer Award, and that has to go to the Houston Texans. I went from thinking the Texans had absolutely, very slim chances against the Chargers to thinking that if they beat the Chargers, then they would have no chance whatsoever against the Chiefs. Okay. So instead, now, like, they're up and coming, man. Like, if the Houston Texans beat the Chiefs, would I be surprised? Of course. But I wouldn't be completely and totally shocked because of how great this defense played last night, how great they played, really all season, right? Like the reason why the Texans went 10-7 isn't because of CJ Stroud. It's because this defense has been really good the entire year. They got playmakers at every single level. They got guys who can rush the passer, good linebackers, great players in the secondary. The Up-and-Comer Award has to go to the Houston Texans. The next award that I'm giving out is the Pittsburgh Steelers Happy to Be Here Award. It's named after the Steelers because they've now lost 6 straight playoff games and have been bounced in the wild card round 4 years in a row. So the winner of the Pittsburgh Steelers Happy to Be Here Award is the Denver Broncos. They had the most dead cap in the history of the NFL. Okay? Like, they're paying Russell Wilson a lot of money to go play for the Steelers. Okay? And they made the playoffs with a rookie quarterback. If you're a Broncos fan, specifically the ones that I engaged with on Twitter during that game who were blaming that loss on Sean Payton, no, you're just not as good as the Bills. I'm sorry. You should just be happy to be there. The Broncos had no business making the playoffs this year, given their cap situation, But because they hit on a first-round quarterback and they hired a good head coach, they were able to get there, sneak in as the 7th seed. Okay? That game was over before the plane even landed in Buffalo. All right? But, Broncos fans, be happy that you got there. You seem to have a pretty bright future. The next award that I'm giving out is the UConn Basketball Easiest Win Award, because, all of their wins these last 2 years in the NCAA tournament have been pretty easy. This award goes to the Ravens. They rolled from the jump. Like, they're just better than Pittsburgh. Okay. Russell Wilson was really bad in the first half. He connected on a couple deep passes in the second. The throwing numbers look good because, the Ravens are like, all right, it's time to run the Gus Bradley defense. Just kind of give up easy throws. So that combined with the 2 bombs that he hit down the field are going to make his numbers look better than what he actually played. The Ravens just showed up. They ran the football for a bajillion yards, and that was kind of it. So the UConn Basketball Easiest Win Award goes to the Baltimore Ravens. The next award that we're giving out is the Tom Brady Best Quarterback Performance Award. It's got to go to Jaden Daniels. Dude was an absolute stud. He was awesome. He did things that rookie quarterbacks usually do not do. He was calm the whole game. Okay. Like Sam Darnold last night was rattled from the jump. Okay. Not Jaden Daniels. Calm, cool the entire way on the road in Tampa Bay, which is a tough place to win. Okay. He didn't make any detrimental mistakes. He threw for 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he led the Commanders in rushing with 36 yards. They were completely incapable of running the football against the Buccaneers front. So that entire game was on the shoulders of Jaden Daniels and his ability to move the ball through the air. And he did it. He found a way to win a game that they should not have won. Okay, just an incredible performance from him. They got the ball with 4 minutes and 41 seconds left in the fourth quarter, and they did not give the football back. Just really incredible stuff from Jaden Daniels. Like, I still think Caleb Williams is going to shake out as the best quarterback in this draft class. Not selling any of Caleb Williams. I still think he's going to shake out as the best quarterback in this draft class. But, man, Jaden Daniels is an absolute stud. The next award that I'm giving out is the DeAndre Ayton Dominatin' Award. For those unfamiliar, DeAndre Ayton gave himself his own nickname, Dominatin'. And ever since he did that, no one talks about him anymore. That's what happens. If you give yourself a nickname, you're probably not very good. That's coming from personal experience, having teammates who did that. I one time had a teammate nickname himself the Future, and then he got cut. Everyone started calling him the Past. Absolutely brutal, but don't give yourself a nickname. Or if you do, you better be awesome. So the DeAndre Ayton Dominatin' Award goes to the Buffalo Bills. Okay, they dominated the Broncos, outscored them 31-0 after the Broncos' first drive. They were clearly the better team. I mean, like, that game was not close. Okay. They ran the ball whenever they wanted. They dominated time of possession. Like, the Broncos didn't possess the football hardly at all that entire game. Okay. I mean, 19 minutes of holding on to the football. It sounds like a Colts game. Seriously. Okay. I mean, the Bills just absolutely dominated in that game. The next award that I'm giving out is that was definitely not a bye week award. That's going to the Los Angeles Chargers. The reference for this, Rex Ryan went on ESPN, Get Up, whatever it's called, and basically said that the Chargers had a bye week because they were playing the Texans, who he didn't think were very good. That was definitely not a bye week. Just ask Justin Herbert. And people are about to pile on him. But, I was talking to Zach Pereles on the show earlier. If you missed that, the podcast will be up pretty shortly after the show. Look, the Chargers were supposed to win like 7 games this year. They won 11. A lot of that's because Justin Herbert is really good. The issue is they just don't have the wide receivers to beat good teams. Like, you have to have elite weapons on the outside. Ladd McConkey's awesome. Okay, he's fast. He is legitimately athletic. He's not sneaky athletic. The term sneaky athletic just means that you're athletic and you're white. That's really all that it means. He is legitimately athletic. But with that being said, like, if he's your best receiver, you're not going to beat the Texans or any other playoff level team except for maybe the Steelers with that as your number one option. So, don't pile too much on Justin Herbert. Was he bad? Yes. But with that being said, like, can we get the guys some weapons not named Quentin Johnston? Next award that we're giving out here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show is the Roman Catholic Purgatory Award. And that award's going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know what they should do. No clue. Okay. They need a quarterback, but they're never bad enough to be able to draft one. Okay. And, people in Pittsburgh are saying, fire Mike Tomlin. Look, if the Steelers fired Mike Tomlin would be the first coach in the history of the NFL to get fired for doing too good of a job. Seriously, like that. That is where we're at with Mike Tomlin. Okay, they need a quarterback. They're never high enough in the draft to grab one. They drafted Kenny Pickett like 23rd overall a few years ago. He's now the third string quarterback in Philadelphia. Okay, so that didn't really work out. The Russell Wilson thing was fine. The Justin Fields thing was okay. They got to find a quarterback. I expect them to be major players for Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy, depending on what the Vikings decide to do at the quarterback spot this year. I don't know what they're going to do, but purgatory isn't fun. I do know that. Colts fans, that. We sit around 9-8, 8-9. That is, the purgatory that the Colts are in. The next award that I'm giving out, it's the hospital award. This goes to the Eagles. Eagles are just insanely healthy. Like, they go to the hospital every day just to get checkups. Like, it's incredible. Every player that started week 1 for the Eagles started for the Eagles on Sunday in their wild card game. That's insane. That does not happen in the NFL. And they should be NFC favorites just because of that. Okay, the healthiest team always, especially, a team as good as the Eagles, healthiest team always has an excellent chance at winning games. Okay, so the hospital award is going to the Eagles because they are insanely healthy. The next award that I'm giving out is the Blindside Award. That's going to the Buccaneers. Okay, they kicked a field goal and gave the ball to the Commanders with 4:41 left on the clock. If they'd seen what the Commanders were going to do coming, they never would have kicked that field goal. They would have gone for it because they kicked that field goal to tie it 20-20, and they didn't see the ball again. Okay, for some reason, they couldn't see the Commanders controlling the ball the rest of the way. They should have seen it coming, okay, because of the way that the Commanders had controlled the football all game. They had like a 9-minute touchdown drive, and they had another drive where they held the ball for like 5.5 minutes, and they kicked a field goal, and they controlled the ball the entire game. But for some reason, the Buccaneers completely missed that. 2 more awards left. The next award is the Old Man Pickup Basketball Game Award. This goes to the Green Bay Packers. What happens when older gentlemen get together and play pickup hoops? Somebody gets hurt, and the Packers had everyone get hurt in their last 2 weeks of the season. Elgton Jenkins got hurt. Devontae Wyatt, Romeo Dobbs, Jaden Reed, Josh Jacobs, Quay Walker, and Josh Myers all got hurt. Meanwhile, they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles, where nobody ever gets hurt. Apparently, that training staff in Philadelphia just must do an absolutely fantastic job. The next and final award that we're giving out is the Great Dane Award. It goes to the Minnesota Vikings. Great Dane, big dog, scary dog, but they're also known as the gentle giant, right? Because Great Danes are not calm, but they aren't super aggressive, okay? But they look like they could be because they're huge. That's the Vikings. That 14-3 record on paper is pretty daunting, okay? But the Los Angeles Rams are never daunted, and they were like, that's fine, bring it on Vikings, and they beat them, right? The Vikings went 0-2 in the games that really mattered. They had a shot at the 1 seed a bye week, and they lost to a banged-up Lions team. And then they go on the road, kind of, to Glendale, to what really kind of felt like a neutral site game last night, and they lost to the Rams, right? And now we revisit a question that I posed, at the start of this. What do the Vikings do with Sam Darnold? Do the Colts pursue Sam Darnold? And look, my opinion on this is pretty simple. You went 14-3 with Sam Darnold. I wouldn't move off that guy. The dude's clearly talented. Sure, he had a couple bad games to end the season. But, I mean, the guy, it's not like the guy's in his 30s, okay? Younger than Joe Burrow. I don't know if you knew that or not, but he is. And the truth of the matter is, J.J. McCarthy, they have no idea. The dude tore his meniscus. He hasn't been able to practice. They haven't been able to watch him, go against the ones or anything like that. They have no idea how good or bad or average J.J. McCarthy could be. They have not a single clue. And for me, I want a known commodity. I want to know exactly what I have at the most important position on the field. Okay? So because of that, if I was the Vikings, I would roll with Sam Darnold. I would trade McCarthy. I also think that you're going to get more for J.J. McCarthy in a trade than you would for Sam Darnold. That allows you to beefing up the defense, add legitimate talent. Brian Flores did a really good job this year as the defensive coordinator, being innovative and making things tough on opposing offenses. But, there's just not a ton of talent on that side of the ball for Minnesota. I would move McCarthy, bulking up this defense, and keep rolling with Sam Darnold. The dude just went 14-3. I get it. He lost a couple big, important games, but he won all the other ones. Okay? So if I was the Vikings, I would keep Sam Darnold. And if I was you, I would turn your TV onto TNT tonight. Because the Pacers, they're hosting the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I can't wait to watch this game. Okay? Yes, I know Halliburton, he's doubtful to play, which isn't surprising given the fact that, his left hamstring tightened up and hamstring injuries are really weird and all that good stuff. But it's still going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see how the Pacers look without him. What I'm about to say probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but please hear me out all the way. I don't think it's a bad thing that Tyrese Halliburton is going to miss some time. When you look at the landscape of the NBA this year, the best team in the league is the Thunder. Okay? The second best team in the league is Cleveland or Boston, one or the other, and then the third is the other of those two. And then there's a pretty sizable gap between everybody else. If someone other than the Thunder, Cavaliers, or Celtics do not hoist the trophy at the end of the year, I will be very surprised. It'll mean that somebody got hurt on all three of these teams. And the idea of allowing Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker and some of these guys to get reps without Halliburton, where they have a chance to actually have the ball in their hands and kind of see what they can do a little bit, I don't think that that's the worst thing. With that being said, obviously I hope Halliburton's not out for the next 20 games. Hopefully he's out 3 or 4 and then he comes back. But I do expect for the Pacers to be fine without him tonight. They can really defend whenever Halliburton's not on the floor. Okay, they outscored the Cleveland Cavaliers 68-40 in the second half without him the other night against Cleveland. Okay, they held the best offense in the NBA to 40 points and a half. That's incredible. Okay, so the Pacers tonight should be better defensively without Halliburton. Everyone else, except for Aaron Nesmith, I don't think he's playing again, should be available. Their offense probably won't be nearly as good as it normally is, but Andrew Nembhard, McConnell, Mathurin, Siakam, those guys can really score and create for other players. So the offense should be fine. Hopefully the improved defense is enough for them to pick up another win over a really good basketball team. So when we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, we're talking Top 10 Tuesday, 10 best thing, the 10 things that every winning team in the NFL has. And then we're going to look and see if the Colts have these things or not. That is coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice start to your week. Oh, man. Top 10 Tuesday, one of my favorite things to do here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. The 10 things every winning team in the NFL does or has. Okay, let's just get the obvious ones out of the way. You have to have a good head coach. It's a requirement. Okay, like I don't know how often good coaching wins teams games because ultimately I think that players are why teams win games. So obviously coaches have to put in the right game plan and the right adjustments and all those things, but the players have to execute. But I do know that bad coaching loses teams a lot of games, like calling, a double pass when you're finally moving the football and then it gets intercepted and returned back to the end zone. And that's kind of the nail in the coffin, or, running a trick play, a little hook and lateral when you're going for two, or, let me think, what other mistakes did Shane Steichen make this year? So like, obviously you have to have a good head coach. You have to have a good quarterback. This is the most important thing. As we all know, the reason why the Chiefs have a chance to win every single game that they play is because they have Patrick Mahomes. Okay. That one doesn't need to be explained any further. You also have to have a general manager that can evaluate his own roster. The Colts do not have that. Okay. Chris Ballard said that's apparently the hardest thing of being a general manager, even though that is what the job is. Every single decision that a general manager makes is based off of how he evaluates his roster. Oh, we aren't very good at corner. That should probably go draft a corner. Oh, we aren't very good at edge rusher. That should probably go sign one in free agency. Like that's kind of how being a general manager works. And when you look at teams that made the playoffs this year, more specifically the teams that didn't make the playoffs last year and then made it this year, this is the trend that you see. Teams that improved their roster. The Broncos, they sat back, they looked at their roster and like, who's not very good at football? Russell Wilson. So they got rid of him, ate the dead cap money, and drafted a new quarterback. Bada bing, bada boom. They made the playoffs. The Vikings signed more free agents this year than any other team in the NFL. Revamped that whole defense. And guess what? They made the playoffs because of it. The Chargers, they needed more help at offensive tackle, so they drafted an offensive tackle. Okay, they needed help at receiver, so they drafted Ladd McConkey, who looks like he's going to play in the NFL for 12 years now. Okay, they evaluated their roster, and which allowed them to make the proper moves to make the playoffs. The Commanders, very similar to the Vikings, revamped a lot of their roster. Okay, the Broncos, Vikings, Commanders, and Chargers all evaluated their rosters and made the necessary changes and improvements. And they were only able to do that because their general managers and coaches actually knew how to evaluate their team. Next, you have to have a tone setter. Okay, every good team, basketball, baseball, football, whatever, you have someone who sets the tone. A leader who kind of knows how to get guys ready and how to focus. That looks different on every team. Like Matthew Stafford, he's the tone setter for the Rams. Calm guy. He's not a rah-rah guy. Just kind of shows up and just kind of gets his guys ready. And then you have, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a video of Terry McLaurin before their game against the Buccaneers setting the tone. A lot of profanity, a lot of yelling, which is cool. There's different ways to do it. And it looks different. And then you look at the Colts and their tone setter, Zaire Franklin, who doesn't know how to shut up and not say stupid things. Okay. So you have to have a good, legitimate tone setter. Okay. You also have to have an elite weapon on the outside. Okay. Part of why the Chargers lost is because they didn't have that. The Texans have that in Nico Collins, a guy who can go make a big play at any moment. The Ravens have that in Zay Flowers. The Chiefs have that in Travis Kelce. The Bills have that in Amari Cooper, and so on. All the really good teams. The Eagles, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, they have two of them. You have to have an elite weapon on the outside if you want a chance to make a run and win the Super Bowl. Okay, you also have to have a dominant pass rusher. Look at the best teams in the NFL. The Chiefs have Chris Jones, the best defensive tackle in the league. Okay, Von Miller looked like a man possessed against Denver. Matabuke for the Ravens, dominant on the interior. The Rams, Byron Young and Jared Verse, right? And you just kind of keep working your way through all of the best teams in the NFL, the Chargers, Joey Bosa, and Khalil Mack. Okay, like you have to have a dominant pass rusher. There also has to be trust within the organization. Okay, like there has to be an understanding and a trust that everyone is going to do their job. Like players have to trust their coaches that they're going to implement the right game plan and that Shane Steichen's going to call the right plays and that whoever the new defensive coordinator is going to get them in the right coverages. And then the coach has to trust the player, to actually go out and make that play. Okay, like if you want to know whether or not a coach trusts a quarterback, look at what they call on 3rd and 9. Okay, is it like a quick screen or are they letting them actually throw the football past the sticks? There has to be trust there. The coach has to trust the general manager that, he's going to go out and get the right players to help him win games with the roster. And the general manager has to trust the coach and that the coach is going to use the player that he got in the right way. Trust, very important for any winning organization. Okay. And then obviously everyone has to trust the quarterback. And as of right now, I don't think anyone trusts Anthony Richardson inside that Colts building. And then there's resiliency. You got to be resilient because this is the NFL and you're going to find yourself in spots where you're losing, right? Or you're going to find yourself in spots where, things just aren't going your way or you're going to make a mistake. For example, the Colts, I didn't think were very resilient this year. Jonathan Taylor dropped that ball before scoring against the Broncos and they fell apart. They didn't respond at all, especially on offense. They got worse after that happened. To me, that shows a lack of resiliency. Okay. And then you also have to have a good kicker because when you play against good teams in the NFL, missing an extra point or missing, a field goal can be costly. Like you need someone that you can rely on in those spots. And after looking at this list of 10 things that good NFL teams do, playoff teams do, the Colts just don't really line up. They don't in the slightest. The Colts have 2 of those things at most. Okay, I like Matt Gay. Solid kicker. When he comes up, I expect him to make it, which to me means that he's a good kicker. So you can check that box for the Colts. When the offensive line is healthy for the Colts, I may have skipped that one. Anyway, when the offensive line's healthy for the Colts, that's one of the other things. I did skip that one. Having a good offensive line is on this list as well. Like, it's not a coincidence that the best teams in the NFL, Lions, Ravens, Eagles, Bills, Chiefs, well, maybe not the Chiefs. It's not a coincidence that 4 of the 5 of them have dominant offensive lines. Like, you have to have that if you want to win games in the playoffs. And when you look at the Colts offensive line's healthy, pretty good. One of the better ones in the NFL. The issue is, very rarely, Eagles being the exception here, the Colts weren't healthy on the offensive line all year. They had a couple injuries, and the offensive line fell apart from there. Okay, so they need more depth in that area, right? So they have 1.5 of these things. This Colts roster needs to be completely revamped. Okay, is Shane Steichen a good head coach? I don't know. Maybe he will be. As of right now, I don't think that he is. Do the Colts have a good quarterback? I don't think I have to answer that one. The Colts have a general manager that can evaluate his own roster. Chris Ballard said that he couldn't, which should have gotten him fired. That statement alone, but whatever. Do the Colts have a tone setter? Not a good one. Do they have an elite weapon on the outside? No. Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, Alec Pierce. There's a lot of good in that wide receiver room, but no great. Despite investing a lot of draft capital on the defensive line, the Colts do not have a dominant pass rusher. There's no trust in that building, and this team wasn't very resilient. They are lacking a lot of the traits and players that you need to win games in the playoffs, or just to win games in the regular season, for that matter. And so after looking at this and thinking about the Colts roster, I got to ask the question, what free agents should the Colts go get? And I've got a list longer than what I thought that I would have. I thought I'd put 3 or 4 names on here. And then I was like, you know what? No, this Colts roster is terrible. It needs to be revamped. And they need to actually bring in talent. Okay, if you bring in guys to compete with the current Colts starters, you're not bringing in talent. You're bringing in more average. And the Colts don't need more average. They need a lot of great. Okay, so they need a great wide receiver. T. Higgins or Chris Godwin. If they do not get franchise tagged, Chris Ballard should pick up his phone and call those guys agents immediately. right? Because that would put, something more than just good in the Colts wide receiver room. Okay, because that's all that the Colts have in there right now. It's just a lot of good. They need some great, and T. Higgins or Chris Godwin could be that for them. Okay, they need a dominant pass rusher, someone who can actually go get the quarterback, right? Because the Colts defense this year was supposed to be relying on that to get off the field on third down, but their pass rush wasn't good, so they didn't get off the field on third down. In fact, they were the second worst third down defense in the NFL. They need a guy like Khalil Mack, Josh Sweat, or DeMarcus Lawrence. They need someone who can be great in pass rushing spots because they don't have that right now. Sure, maybe Leatu Latu develops into that over the offseason. I don't know. We'll see. But as of right now, they don't have it. And, Chris Ballard did his whole, I hope, that these guys respond well after falling short of the playoffs last year. That's why he ran it back. And it didn't work. Hope is not a strategy. Never has been, never will be. Okay, go get a proven commodity. Go get a Khalil Mack or a Josh Sweat or a DeMarcus Lawrence if those guys make their way into free agency. Next, linebacker. Colts need help with linebacker. They need someone who can run and cover on third down because, Zaire Franklin, EJ Speed, they're great at, filling run gaps, missing the tackle, and then allowing Nick Cross to come down and clean it up. They're really good at that, but that's not what the Colts need. They need guys who can cover on third down and make tackles. Zach Bond of the Eagles is a dog. No way around it. Dre Greenlaw, awesome for the 49ers. Okay, Nick Bolton, been great for the Chiefs. If any one of those three guys hit free agency, the Colts should go get them immediately. All three of those guys would be immediate upgrades at linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts. Oh, but Zaire Franklin was all pro. Yeah, no, I don't. No, he shouldn't have been. Right? The fact that Zaire Franklin was all pro just proves to me that whoever votes for all pro did not watch the Colts play at all this year. Okay? Because the reason why Zaire Franklin led the, NFL in tackles is because the Colts were on the field more than any other defense in the NFL. That is just the reality of it. Colts also need help at corner. A guy like DJ Reed or Javarius Ward would be awesome. Those are probably the two best corners in this free agency class. Jalen Jones and Samuel Womack, good stories. Jalen Jones, 7th round pick, did a solid job. Samuel Womack, taking off waivers. Okay, but the Colts need to be better on the outside. Like that is something that needs to be addressed either in the draft or in free agency, one way or the other. That has to be taken care of. The Colts also need to get better at safety. They bring Julian Blackmon back. I might go crazy. Seriously. Okay? Like Julian Blackmon does not need to be a Colt next year. Javon Holland, Budda Baker, one of those guys, probably going to hit the open market, pay a little extra for him. Javon Holland's one of the best safeties in the NFL. Budda Baker's probably the best safety in the NFL. Like you want playmakers on the back end, those guys, check that box. Go get one of them. Seriously. So if I was the Colts, that's what I'd do in free agency to patch all of these holes that they have in their roster. Speaking of holes and issues and things like that, Indiana fans are not happy with Illinois. Or excuse me, Indiana fans are not happy with Indiana. Good news for Indiana is they play a basketball game tonight. And if they win, everyone will calm down rather quickly because that is how it works here in the great state of Indiana. Every loss, there's a very large reaction to, which is normal, right? Like that's what fans do. It's like, I'm not saying, shame on you or anything. With that being said, Indiana really need a win tonight. It's very important for them to pick up a win, not just for, fan base reasons, but because when you look at their schedule, their upcoming schedule is really tough and they've got a great chance to win tonight. And I'm going to tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unfiltered takes live here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice start to your week. It is only Tuesday, which I learned this morning when I woke up. It's Tuesday, which means Indiana, they play a basketball game tonight against Illinois. And, Indiana fans not happy because they went on the road and got blown out by Iowa, who can really score the ball. I mean, that's what they do. That's what they've always done under Fred McCaffrey. So, it happens sometimes, though. Sometimes you lose road games in conference. That's just the way that it goes. Right, if it makes you feel any better, Purdue lost on the road by double digits to Penn State, who is not as good as Iowa. Okay, sometimes you lose road conference games. It happens. If they beat Illinois tonight at home, the 19th ranked team in the country, then opinions on Indiana will swing once again. And yesterday during the Power Hour, the best hour on sports radio in the country, Dan and Kent threw out a very interesting question that I pondered last night. What is the identity of Indiana? Like what kind of team is Indiana? And they didn't really have an answer, right? They're like, is this like a perimeter shooting team? Is this a tough defensive team? Is this a throw it inside and score on the interior team? Like, what is the identity of this year's Indiana basketball team? And it's a great question, one that I thought over a fairly decent amount last night. And I landed on this. The Indiana basketball team is like public school cafeteria food. Okay, one day it's great. Some days it's average, and other days it makes you want to throw up or it makes you crap your pants in front of all your friends. And then you get made fun of for the rest of your life, so brutally so that you end up moving away as soon as possible. Okay, that is Indiana basketball this year. Incredibly inconsistent. Against Louisville, Nebraska, Iowa, they looked like the worst team in the Big Ten, which is probably a bit dramatic, but, that's what they look like, right? And then against, South Carolina and Providence and USC, the second half of that game against Penn State, they looked like a team that deserved to be ranked. They looked like one of the 25 best teams in the country. They looked good. They shot the ball well. They defended. Omar Ballo running the floor, finishing at the rim, blocking shots, doing all the things that, Indiana paid him to do. Then, against Gonzaga and Rutgers, they looked like a middling Big Ten team that might sneak into the NCAA tournament. All right, that's what this Indiana team is right now. They are incredibly inconsistent. Some nights they look great. Some nights they look terrible. Okay, that's who they are as of right now. Okay, and that's fine for now, but they need to pick it up. They need to get in gear. They need to start being consistent. Okay, because starting tonight and over Indiana's next 8 games, it gets tough. 5 of Indiana's next 8 games come against ranked opponents. We are going to learn soon, very soon, how good, bad, or mediocre Indiana basketball is this year and what kind of a team they are. Based off of what we've seen, this is who I would say Indiana is. Indiana is an inside scoring team because I think their 2 best scorers are Omar Ballo and Malik Reneau. I do think that when Malik Reneau comes back, he'll help them out a little bit. So they're an inside scoring team with streaky shooting. Okay, like Luke Goody, seems like he hits all of his threes or he hits one. Trey Galloway, it's the same way. Miles Rice, very similar. They're just a very streaky shooting team, that's a part of why they lost to Iowa the other night. They shot 25% from 3, while Iowa shot 46% from 3. You're not winning when there's that big of a gap between how well you shoot the basketball. So offensively, I think it's an inside scoring team with some streaky shooting. Okay, and then defensively, I think they're very average. I don't think that they guard the ball great. But then again, I don't think that they guard the ball terribly. I think Omar Ballo does a tremendous job of protecting the rim whenever he's actually active and wanting to play basketball. So I think defensively they're average. Offensively, They should be interior oriented with, some guys on the perimeter that can make shots sometimes. That's who they are right now. And they need the best version of that tonight, because tonight they're playing against Illinois, who's a good team, man. Like, they can really play. And some potential good news for Indiana is that as of yesterday, Brad Underwood, head coach at the University of Illinois, was asked if their best player, a guy whose name I cannot pronounce, he was asked if basically his best player was going to play. He's a 6'6" freshman guard from Lithuania, and he is by far Illinois' best player. Okay, he leads Illinois in points per game. He leads them in assists per game. He leads them in steals, and he's their best three-point shooter at 41%. Indiana better hope that dude doesn't play tonight, because I don't know who Indiana would put on him. For some reason, Mike Woodson doesn't like to play Anthony Leal. I like it when Leal plays. I think he's just a smart player, can shoot it well enough to get time on the floor. So, I kind of wish Leal would play more. I do think that if Illinois, if their best player, the 6'6" guy from Lithuania, if he is available, I do think we'll see a lot of Leal, because he's like 6'4", 6'5", maybe, big, tall, long. Mike Woodson called him one of their better defenders earlier in the year. He's the guy that they put on Ace Bailey after he got going. So we'll kind of see if we see more Leal tonight. I do think that if the Lithuanian kid plays, we'll see him. But I hope he doesn't, though, because if he doesn't play, then Indiana's chances of winning go up exponentially. So with that being said, that is not the only basketball that we've got going on tonight. The Pacers play primetime tonight. Big time here, right? They host the Cleveland Cavaliers, which, they beat them the other night, which is a big deal because they're really good. Like, they are best record in the NBA. They had won 12 in a row, and then they played, the Indiana Pacers, who've now won 6 in a row, still undefeated in 2025. So, Halliburton probably not going to play. He's doubtful. That's what he was listed as yesterday, which isn't surprising, right? That left hamstring tightened up. Hamstring injuries are weird, and it's not great. But I am excited to see how the Pacers look without him. They outscored the Cavaliers 68-40 in the second half without their best player, Tyrese Halliburton. Okay, and this team is built to withstand injuries. Like, they are. Not several, like what happened earlier in the year, but no Aaron Nesmith again, probably, and no Halliburton. Like, look, this Pacers team goes like 10 guys deep, so they're still going to have 8 guys that can play out there on the floor. TJ McConnell, excellent point guard. Andrew Nembhard just impacts winning at an incredible rate. Both defensively, what he does offensively is pretty big as well. So they'll be fine in terms of that point guard spot. I am expecting for the Pacers to be much better defensively tonight. I've talked a little bit about the improvements that we've seen from Halliburton, just off the ball. He's much better, in helping and playing the passing lanes and doing those things. On the ball, he's still not very good, but, better than what he was last year. So he's made some improvements, but a combination of TJ McConnell and Andrew Nembhard, or Andrew Nembhard and Benedict Mathurin, or McConnell and Mathurin, like, that is just a much better guard combo defensively than having Halliburton out there. So hopefully the defense is much improved tonight. I do expect for Cleveland to absolutely light it up, because they didn't shoot the ball very well against Indiana the other night. They're the best shooting team in the NBA. It's a large part of why their record is as good as it's been. So I expect them to shoot it really well. Hopefully the Pacers are going to have, the offensive juice to be able to combat that. Okay. The dude, like, this is a really good basketball team that the Pacers are going to play tonight. Can't wait to watch them play. They're going to be absolutely fantastic. The Fever, when does their season start? It's got to be coming up soon. I know that weird 3v3 league is scheduled to start soon. Caitlin Clark is not playing in that. Holy, geez, that didn't start till May. Geez, I guess I never realized how far out that whole thing started, which is probably good though, right? Like, they don't need to play while the NFL is going on, or college basketball, or anything else that's happening is really going on, like anything major, right? Because, a large part of why people watch the WNBA is because There's nothing else on. Simple as that. Like, Caitlin Clark's great, but if they were playing tonight or last night, I think most people would have decided to watch Rams Vikings instead, even though Caitlin Clark is pretty incredible. And we've got a really good college basketball slate tonight. Illinois, Indiana, obviously that game's at 7 on Peacock. Texas A&M plays Kentucky. That game's going to be awesome. Ole Miss plays Alabama. The SEC is just loaded. It is the best conference in college hoops this year. Let me see what else. Oh, I guess those are it. All right. In addition, Mississippi State, they play Auburn. Mississippi State's tough. Like, if you want to watch tough basketball, man, just turn on the SEC. Athletes everywhere, dudes diving on the floor, skying up high for rebounds. I mean, it's really, really impressive what we've seen from the SEC so far this year, just obliterating teams. In the Big Ten, though, Illinois, they play IU tonight at 7, 9 o'clock. We've got Ohio State and Wisconsin. That game should be good. And then at 10:30, we got Iowa and USC. USC beat Illinois in their most recent game, which, look, if USC can beat Illinois, then, our guys here or down in Bloomington should undoubtedly be able to beat Illinois. USC hung 82 without their two best players. They hung 82 on Illinois. Certainly, the Hoosiers are going to be able to put the ball in the bucket tonight, kind of rectify their offensive struggles that they had against Iowa. I can't wait. I think that they're going to bounce back in a relatively big way. We'll kind of see what they do, but I can't wait. I can't. Either way, if Indiana wins, it's going to be great. If they lose, I can't wait to get on Twitter. I may need to start doing like a Twitter Hall of Fame. So just like after the Colts lose or after, Indiana loses, just find like 4 or 5 tweets that just stand out above the rest, right? Of not even just of like good or smart, but just like absurdity. Like, just find the most absurd tweets. I may do that. I don't think that's a bad idea. So that's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, everything that went on. We gave out NFL awards. Zach Pereles came on at 10:20. He was outstanding as always. Talked a little Pacers Cavs, talked a little Indiana versus Illinois, all that good stuff. Just an absolutely outstanding show. Tomorrow, expect a lot more good stuff because I'm bringing it all year long. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to my show. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. The Dan Dockett Show is set to come your way here in about 6.5 minutes. Let me think. Who we have on today? We got Fran Frachilla. He's going to come on at 1. Philip Lindsay's going to come on at 2 to talk NFL playoffs. Just an absolutely loaded show for the Dan Dockett Show today, and that show comes your way here in about 5 minutes.